It works. I tested. Yes, it's on. Look, I did all the testing.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Okay, 1:30, shall we begin? First things first, cell phones, please. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Present.
Commissioner David,
Present.
Commissioner Gossick-Sideman,
Present.
Vice Mayor Moore,
Present.
Mayor Hillman,
Present.
Town Attorney Tercivia isn't here yet. Town Manager Labadie.
Present.
Thank you.
And would we all rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to make one adjustment on the agenda, and that is to pull the PACE contract, please. It needs some additional work.
Yep.
Anybody else have any adjustments on the agenda, pluses or negatives?
Mayor?
Yeah.
I had several comments about that contract. I will provide those to Mr. Labadie.
That'd be great. Okay,
Major
anything else?
points. Thank you.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve the agenda with that one change?
I move we approve the agenda with the change regarding the PACE contract.
Second.
All in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Here we have no presentations or proclamations. Do we have any public comments?
There are no public comments today.
Okay. Announcements, board vacancies. Code Enforcement Board has one vacancy for an unexpired term ending September of 24. Financial Advisory Board has one vacancy for an unexpired term ending April 30th, 22. Meetings and events. December 24th and 27th, the town hall will be closed in observance of Christmas. December 31st, town hall will be closed for New Year's. January 4th, we have a town commission meeting at 1:30. There's board action report. There's a code enforcement and a planning board report that's attached, but there's no action called for on them unless anybody has a comment in either of the two. If not, we'll continue. Nothing on ordinances, nothing on consent agenda, nothing on unfinished business. Let's move on to new business. Update on the Highland Beach Fire and Rescue, the implementation schedule, and we will turn it over to you, Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor, Commission. Thank you. Thank you. So as we've talked, I know in person, each of us have talked about the progress we're making on creation of our fire department. It is time to kind of come together collectively to look at the big picture and bring it all together. So we have three major items. One is the implementation schedule, which I will present up here. I sent it to you a couple of weeks ago to show you the marked progress we've made on some of these major tasks. We'll also talk about rescue vehicle acquisition, where there's three different types of an emergency rescue vehicle. So we'll kind of give you our recommendation and rationale and what those options look like, so we can move forward with our specifications. Again, both of our lead consultants are here. We have Glenn Joseph, who you've all met. Tom McCarthy is also here. He's our EMS expert, and they will be here, and they'll probably just jump in as we start having this conversation on things that we're working on. So when we start talking about our COPCN type tasks and how we're progressing this and that, the consultants will come up and be able to answer any very specific questions you may have. But overall, is that? No, it's not open. Yeah, so you have in front of you those three documents. Also, we're going to talk about the fire department as far as the fire station, and three options that you have in your packet too. Joby, our lead architect, is here too to walk you through that and kind of where our heads are at, what are three major options, some of the pros and cons on the fire station, and kind of give us guidance as to where we want to go with that selection and moving forward. You're gonna have to email it to me. Okay, so everybody has that in their as always, a little bit. It's not loading, Teresa?
No, because you're not connected to the certain network.
Thought it was in the building. Okay. So as you could see, and I don't have it in front of me, but I know that you have it in front of you. A lot of our major tasks we have completed. Again, as you recognize, we've all went to the tri-color look to it, so you can know what's a critical task. Things as we get them done, they become blacked out and crossed out, so the font goes away. So we've made a lot of major progress, as you can see, and we're even into what is shown on there is phase 2 work products. We've already got into those and have started making some pretty significant progress. So I'm very pleased that we are making that type of headway on our project. Again, as you could see, our first big task we had to was the referendum for voter approval. We got that. We got that at 89%. So we're very excited that we've gotten that authorization to allow us to proceed with everything. Now, the big items that I want to get into, I think is probably more of your interest in conversation, as to how do we begin to fit within the county system. What I mean by that is we're not currently a ALS municipal organization. We don't have any type of certification. How do we fit into this piece, into the county? And that was always our big question, is how are they going to let us come into play and exist as a standalone organization? I think the first task, as I just mentioned, was getting voter approval. We are now authorized by our voters to proceed with this. So we have all of the legal foundation elements in place. We've adopted our ordinance that allows us to create the fire department. We've begun negotiating. We have a medical director, as you see there, that's 99%. Mr. Joseph will be getting Dr. Cohen's signature here. It's in the envelope. Everybody's in agreement. He's chasing him down and have him sign that tomorrow. So tomorrow I'll be proud to say it's going to be 100% and crossed off, but we're all on the same page, and Dr. Cohen and Dr. Palmer are on board and ready to go. Again, ballot language, PR firm, public education, referendum, we got all those places on there. You'll see in here that we've created a few items. What you'll see with our schedule, as we learn more, the schedule begins to take its own shape and change a little bit. Originally, we thought we would need a fire chief in place, seated and ready to go. Luckily, because we were able to get Mr. Joseph and Mr. McCarthy on board, that need isn't quite as high as it once was when we didn't have them on board with us. With that, some of those items aren't as pressing as they once were. And you'll see as this schedule compared to the original one, some of those type of tasks have been pushed back a little bit and other tasks have moved forward. The biggest one, and I think it's worthy of some discussion, so you really have an understanding as I know myself, Chief Hartman, Teresa, as we're all learning the fire world as it exists within Palm Beach County, there are some things that we didn't know, but are learning at a very rapid pace. And I think the biggest one, I mean, you'll see in there like medical procedures and EMS protocols, those are pretty much done. The team pretty much has that in place. Dr. Cohen knows what he wants. We know what they want. A lot of those things that we thought would take a lot of time are already in place. The biggest one, which I think warrants some explanation, is the COPCN. What is that? What does that mean for us? We're quite comfortable on how we're moving forward. But the interesting part is, how do we fit into that Palm Beach puzzle when there isn't a spot for us within the current ordinance? How does a new municipality form its own fire department? So they've gone to what one provision in that ordinance is called the pilot program that allows new ALS type life support agencies to come into place, because they request application in October of 22. We're not live until 24. So what does that mean for us? So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Glenn and Tom to kind of walk us through, what does this mean? So you get an understanding. I get it, but I can't say it as well as they do. And I think it's good to understand what is the COCPN? How do we fit? What is our engagement back to the emergency management team at the county? And how do we pull? What does that mean for us? So Tom McCarthy, if you, the commissioners haven't met you quite yet, so introduce yourself a little bit, give them a little background, and then bring them into those tasks.
Okay, so good afternoon, Commission. Thank you for having us today. My name, as Glenn said, is Tom McCarthy. I'm a recently retired Division Chief of Emergency Medical Services from the City of River Beach Fire Rescue. I served there proudly for 27 and a half years. The better part of the last 15 years there, I served as the Division Chief of Emergency Medical Services. So having served in that capacity, I've taken part in a lot of processes of applying for and receiving the COPCN. Now, the COPCN stands for Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity. So basically what that does is that gives the county's blessings to the municipality or the operating agency, depending on your type of certificate you receive, to actually operate and provide these levels of services within your municipality and the boundaries. So moving forward through that process, we're really confident that we didn't see any hurdles to getting an application, what we call a clean application for a new COPCN in play. However, having said that, because of the windows, and I'm going to briefly describe what a window is. A window is a 6-year window within the county ordinance is for the duration of what we call a primary COPCN. So let's talk about our neighbors, Boca Raton. Boca Raton has a COPCN. That COPCN will sunset at December 30th of next year. So to keep that thing from sunsetting, what they will do is they will apply for a new COPCN for a 6-year window that would start January 1 of 2023. Because we are not running hot until May 1 of 2024, we're kind of outside of that window of opportunity. So that's where, in consultation with the fine folks at the Palm Beach County Emergency Management, their feeling was that the proviso within the ordinance, pilot program services, would be the best route for us to travel. So in conversations with them, with their staff, we learned that there really is not any type of proviso within any of the application structure, whether it's a primary, which is a fire department based EMS, a secondary, think your private ambulance company that transports a patient from one facility to another facility, majority of the time on a non-emergent basis, and the special secondary COPCN, which would allow a security guard company to provide first responder emergency medical services within a gated community. So what this municipality needs is the same primary that all the other municipalities have. And therefore that window, like I said, being finite, is a non-starter for what our situation is. However, the belief of County Emergency Management was pilot program services, because you can apply for that at any time. And then, of course, once you apply for it and you receive it, then you're going to be subject to reviews, inspections, quality and progression within the constraints of whatever you decide you want your fire department to look like and behave like. Now, there's going to be certain minimum standards that is going to have to be done as far as competencies go, levels of training for your personnel and staff, apparatus and equipment that Mr. Joseph will go over as far as the vehicles go. But all these things we've already planned in Glenn's work plan to satisfy those requirements. The only really sticking points that we anticipate will be the personnel roster. So there are components in the ALS profile sheet that you need to get from the state of Florida that allows you to provide these services, because the state does regulate advanced life support services. To be able to walk that back to get that ALS license, though, you do need that COPCN. And in conversations with the folks at the state of Florida, they don't anticipate any problem, whether it's a primary or a pilot program, COPCN. As long as they get it, we get it to them 2 months before wheels hot, then there shouldn't be any problem whatsoever. And they too will send somebody down to look at the facilities, they'll look at the personnel roster, they'll look at the protocols. And this is strictly EMS. This has nothing to do with fire. And they'll look at all these things. They'll look at the medical director, his licensing and all that kind of stuff. So right now we're on pace. Getting Dr. Cohen to be able to complete this contract is a very big item. Everything else is going to be easy enough to do. I don't anticipate, as the county emergency management folks start to build a pilot program application, which I anticipate will be very similar to a standard COPCN application, then we'll be able to plug that data in and those data points. Because right now, to do a COPCN, we would have to do, there's 12 attachments that have to go into it. We'd have to put like 11 letters in there as placeholders for those attachments, because it's just not prudent to have those attachments. And it's impossible in some regards, like an ALS profile, to put that in anyhow. So that's where pilot program services in the estimation of EM, which I agree with, is probably the best course of action. Kind of long-winded, sorry.
Yeah, so we have commitments from the county, as Tom has indicated, to work with us and make that commitment to us that they will work with us to get there. So everything we need and want to have in place, Tom has secured, and those commitments have been coming to us from the county. I've received them through different channels, but we're getting those commitments that everything's on board and we're moving forward. And you, as Tom had indicated, he and Glenn have really started to put all of those application materials together. They have a whole spreadsheet of all this stuff in place. So when I give you this implementation schedule, you know, some of these items have like 15 subset items that aren't in here, but all of those items are in play and are being mapped out and put in. And, you know, if you ever want to know about acronyms, Tom's your guy. He'll tell you all about all these acronyms on everything EMS related, quality control, the types of billing, contractors and other types of software programs that we have to use to track patients. All that stuff is in place. We're luckily, a lot of the vendors that are in play with a lot of these other larger agencies are willing to work with us and allow us to, as we traditionally say, piggyback other contracts. So we'll be able to get those vendors in play relatively simply without having to go through 15 RFP processes to secure what all these other agencies and the county agency is using. And the good thing with the county is they have agreed in basic form to provide that dispatch services, which is our other communication piece within the larger agency. They've already given us a template. We're working with that through Torsivia and Ruben's office. We've, again, those reviews. All of what I want, really the big picture is everything's going as we had hoped it would, and even better at the speed at which we're executing. And then again, some of these other tasks that are bigger, you'll get to see today is we got to pick out some EMS vehicles. And then Joby from, we want to call it PGAL. So we decided we were going to do yesterday. We'll call it PGAL or PGAL Architects. We'll present what are some of our options to get a facility in place to house our new operation.
This also is backed up with a book about this thick that Tom put together of all of the products that are required to go on the ambulance and roughly the costs behind that. So
Yes.
thank you for putting that together and confusing the hell out of me. But okay, so stay there, little Q&A. start down at the end, John?
Okay, so it looks like, sounds like, smells like we're making progress.
Yes, sir.
So I look at anything like this to the critical path. COCPN is a critical juncture
Yes,
in
sir.
our path to success. So you're saying that we don't need any contingency plans, everything's in place to do what needs to be done in time without hiccups, correct?
Yes, sir.
We can hold you accountable if something goes wrong. Because to me, we don't go anywhere without that COCPN.
And that is the center cog that's going to make this whole thing work, is again, that's COPCN. So as long as we can continue to work in collaboration with the County Office of Emergency Management, there should be no problems whatsoever.
Okay, again, because it's so critical,
Yes.
is there anything that we should be doing that we're not doing right now to address this?
No, sir, not this time, but I can tell you this, as I continue to examine with a critical eye myself, I always try to look at the other side of the coin. And as things come up, I immediately make those phone calls. I reach out to make sure that if this happens, then what? What's our plan B? What's our plan C? So, and that's the nice thing about having done what I do here in this county for so long, is I can pick up a phone and anticipate. If I see something's going down the wrong path, or I don't see it exactly staying within the lanes that I was told it was going to be within, I make the phone call immediately and ask, where do we go from here? How do we make this better? So.
All right, well then, my next source of concern, as I look again at the critical path, what are the key crossroads? And getting a fire chief, I would have thought would command a higher priority, but I'm hearing that while it's important, it's not a priority at this time. Would you agree?
I would agree wholeheartedly.
And you feel that the priority is more in the March timeframe that we get that resolved?
Well, as far as, and I like to get a little clarification, the March timeframe.
I'm looking at the critical path here.
Understood. Okay.
I think I moved it back a certain amount of months, say 6 months.
Let me take that question.
Sure.
Okay, Glenn will take that question. How about
All
that?
right, Glenn.
All right, so you want to know about the fire chief and why it's fallen behind in the critical path?
Well, and in fact, hey, we're creating a fire department. You would think
Glenn,
that
thank you.
you would think that a fire chief and getting a fire chief on board who has to live and manage and work with and, resolve all of this would be a little closer.
Well, Mr. Labadie and I, when we discussed the workflow initially, I explained to him that I will be doing most of the work that the fire chief will be doing until you get one online. So that's my job, is to be your pro forma fire chief. So all the protocols that are being written, all of the contracts that have been signed, I am following through on those until you have signed off on the fire chief. That was my role. That was what I was hired to do. Now, because the COCPN requires a fire chief's signature, then by the time we submit that in the end of August, we should have somebody online to do that signature. Although the manager should be able to do it himself. But if and the point of the whole thing is that everybody put on board, there's a cost associated with that person. So if you could delay the fire chief's implementation or hiring for 6 months, 8 months, a year, that's 800,000, whatever, hundred thousands of dollars you're saving, not having to pay that salary and benefits for that period of time. So my commitment is to make all those things happen. So when we get a fire chief, all of the nuts and bolts will be in place. He'll review them, make any changes that he or she thinks is required, and then we can move on with the process without missing a hitch. And I will be here until the day he tells me he no longer needs me, or Mr. Labadie fires me, either way,
Okay, so you're our de facto fire chief. I get it.
essentially.
And you don't see any issues with a fire chief that is hired eventually, who will look at you saying, it's great, you did all this work and you're handing the baton to me and I don't have to do all this grunt work. Now I can focus on the recruitment, the firefighters and the apparatus and the equipment and being able to deliver the fire safety service.
That's correct. And all the specifications will be written out, and he could change or she could change anything they want when they go in there, but everything will be laid out. It's always easier to correct a document than actually to create it from scratch. So that's the where we're working with. We're going to put everything together, everything's laid out, and whatever he or she wants to change, that'll be their prerogative as the head of the department.
Okay, so, and I don't want to dominate this by any means, but I do have one more question. The next section here that I look at a higher view is the whole HR hiring process for everybody. Now, we can buy equipment, we can get the vehicles, but we need the bodies. And in this case, I have talked to some of the firefighters that are in that house right now. Some of them are, looking at us as, wow, this is great. Others have no idea what they should do. Are we doing anything with the crew that's already here and to making sure we have a transition that works?
I've been asked this question. I'm looking at Rich. I don't think Rich asked me. It may have been Mike Diamond at the Post that may have asked me this question. Are we adverse to recruiting some of the employees out of Delray? I said, we're not adverse to that if they want to come over. It's going to be their choice if they so choose to apply. It's an open application period. There are some things that I think would be a concern for them. The portability of the pension systems aren't there because we have a different pension system. That's up to them. But that we're more than glad there isn't any bad feelings or ill will towards the employees that are currently servicing there. We would open them with welcome arms, but it's going to be their choice at that point in time. As for the HR piece, that is in queue and in place and moving forward. But again, it's not until we start doing some heavy recruiting that we need to. Mr. Joseph's already written all of the job descriptions. So all of that's in play. So the HR person, we really don't need to bring in per se until we're probably 6 to 8 months prior to doing the hardcore recruit. So they can come in, fine tune some of the HR policies and get it in play. So again, similar to the fire chief, maybe not as critical, definitely not as critical as the fire chief, but those timelines pushed back a little bit on us once we saw what we were doing and how we're getting into this process. It's there. We know we need it. We do need it. There's a commitment to do it from this commission. Exactly when, I think, has been pushed back into the latter part of next year, calendar year.
Okay, well, and again, for whoever might be watching this and for everyone's sake, I would want to reinforce, although we went through a difficult time in negotiating the whole situation with Delray, and unfortunately, it went down the wrong path for them. But for us, we have to take this path. And we feel positive about the folks who work here in the fire department that we have. The crew here is excellent. I want them to understand that we have nothing but positive feelings about them. All of this is nothing about them per se. It's, the contract and how we work this. So I would certainly be positive towards them. And I just wanted to reinforce that for the sake of everyone here. Thank you.
Let me put everybody's mind at ease also on the work that Mr. Joseph is doing. He was the fire chief over at Boynton Beach for 5 years. He was second in command at Boca Raton for 20 plus years. Fire management is in his DNA. Okay. So we have a very experienced man here.
So let me correct some of those numbers. 10
okay.
years at Boca as a deputy chief and 4 years in Boynton Beach as a fire chief.
Okay.
I just want to make sure it's
I'm sorry, I was off just a touch there, but we have a great deal of experience with Mr. Joseph, so we're very pleased to have him. You don't have to think twice about the work he's doing for us.
So as far as recruitment goes, from the time you recruit a firefighter to putting him online takes about a year.
Yeah.
So if we're going hot in 2024, May 1st, so if we begin recruiting and hiring on first quarter of 2023, that'll give us plenty of time to vet those people, get on board by the first quarter of 2024. Well, you have 3 months or 4 months to train them, orient them, and all that stuff. So that timeline is already in the process. It's just a matter of when do you want to execute. Again, if we have 24 people on shift for 12 months, that's a lot of money that we're not getting any return on. So we want to make it as close as possible to our start date without putting us in a jeopardy of not having it done in time. So you want that wiggle room, but not too much because that costs money.
Yep. I'm with you. Very
Okay.
good.
On to the next.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you for lending us your expertise. It definitely sounds to me like you're on track and that you both know what you're doing. And I love the fact that you can pick up a phone and make a call and that you have contacts within this county where we are going to have to live. I'm pleased with the progress. It's way beyond where I thought we would be at this point. I understand we don't need a chief yet because there's nothing for him to look over. It's just too soon and everything has to be done in its own time period. So thank you.
Okay, on to Peggy.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen. A couple of things. I wondered if you could perhaps speak to the general sort of thinking in the fire community based upon Broward County having 13 municipalities currently looking to establish their own. And as of a November League of Cities meeting, it turns out, very interestingly enough, there are 15 developments north to South County who are looking to change, to alter the actual COPCN establishment of their contracts. They are utilizing secondary COPCNs to have ambulance services at these developments. I won't read the whole list, but Frenchman's Creek, Mirasol, Ballon Isles, Polo Club Boca, Bears Club, Admiral's Cove. Very, very interesting. I wasn't even aware until that meeting that they were looking to actually rewrite the COPCNs pending, and the fact that they have an annual capability of applying. So if you could comment on the general tone of fire departments in South Florida, it seems like we're not alone in looking for increased service. And in fact, we're like a poster child, maybe.
Right, I understand. So as ordinances go, rules and regulations, SOGs, they're always subject to review and revision, et cetera. I actually sat in on one of the reviews, two of the reviews actually of the county ordinance review and revision. And it was up for discussion that during those different times was, is 6 years too long for a primary or is it too short? Should we find a middle ground? Should we pair it up with cycles? Now, these are all abstract conversations that happen within the context of these meetings. Should we cycle it up with the state ALS licensure cycle? Should we seek to do it in an off cycle? Say an ALS cycle is on an even numbered year, a COPCN on the odd numbered years. And it is very labor intensive. You burn your EMS chief for about 6 to 8 weeks when you do a COPCN application. I mean, that person is persona non grata at that point. So those are some of the challenges that you look at. When you speak specifically to the 15 developments of the special secondary COPCN, that is something that does not and will not affect the town of Highland Beach or the municipalities. But what that will do is that will open up the bigger window of the ordinance itself. And that's where you can have those conversations. You know, a primary COPCN was always the way to go for a municipality or the county. But now there's a pilot program services for a municipality like this one, that's going to have to be codified. They're going to have to open up that ordinance. They're going to have to make those amendments, make those adjustments, build the application, include that as an attachment within the ordinance. And they're also going to take a look at the special secondaries. Now, the secondaries are, just like I said earlier, it would be an AMR unit taking a patient from Kindred Hospital to St. Mary's for a procedure or back. So that's a secondary. The special secondary is if they're looking for expansion to include transport services within those enclaves underneath the special secondary COPCN. Right now, that's not a possibility. But again, that does not mean that that won't become a topic of conversation, again, when they look to review and revise the current ordinance. Broward County is a whole different world. The counties by ordinance determine what the COPCNs look like and the duration. And so that's codified by the state. And you have that freedom, you have a home rule freedom to be able to build a COPCN process as you deem necessary.
Could you explain how our county actually invoked and sat with a 6-year timeframe when I think we might be the only one in the state with such a setup?
It is a big window. And that was one of those windows that we inherited back when this thing really crested back, and I believe it was like 1994, 1995, when you had private ambulance companies that were the predominant transport entities for fire department EMS. So just to give you a quick snapshot of what that would look like, the fire department would go to a call at a given address. And then a private ambulance company would come in, and then they would get in the back of that private ambulance, the paramedic from the fire department with the patient, and provide treatment back to the hospital. Then that ambulance, that rescue truck from the fire department would follow them to the hospital, pick up their personnel, restock their truck, et cetera, and go back in service. So just historically going back to that point, 94, 95, there was a big change, a very, very dynamic shift here within the county to where the fire departments wanted to be able to do treatment and transports. So that's when I believe historically that COPCN language came into adoption. And I don't know that 6 years has ever not been the window.
Got it. And so you feel that there's a feel in the air that this might be under review and change eventually, maybe too late for us, but you believe that the powers be are looking at that?
Well, when they
change?
open the ordinance, they haven't yet announced, because when they announce that they're going to open the ordinance, they usually seek input from the fire departments, from the private vendors, et cetera, everybody who's got skin in the game per se. And that's when that ordinance gets built. And once those things go into those meeting rooms down at the emergency management center, everything is open for discussion as far as durations, as far as the rules of engagement for the 3 types, now possibly 4 types of COPCN. That's when that gets hashed out.
Okay, thank you very much. And you'll keep us posted on these
By all
goings
means.
on. It sounds like there's just rumblings of change. And
I can tell you that the state of the county has wanted to revise the ordinance for some time. They just haven't been able to commit the time and resource to it with COVID and all the other things afoot.
okay, great. Thank you very much for
You're
all your
welcome.
work.
Sure.
Yeah, I have a question. So at one point you said this pilot COCPN is strictly EMS, not fire. And as you've made your presentation, it seems like there's a distinction between EMS and fire. And I'm kind of confused about all that. Like, so the COCPN is more focused on EMS,
Yes.
but then how does fire?
Well,
Get in.
EMS works within the fire department.
Okay.
EMS is just a part of the city's fire department,
Okay.
but it is regulated. EMS is regulated in a whole different spectrum from the state down, actually from the federal level down, than the fire departments are. The fire departments have their own rules of engagement. The fire side has their own rules of engagement. So it's basically, it's a marriage of the two within one house. You've got the EMS side of the house, but also too, in these fire-based EMS departments, those folks that are on the rescue truck, your EMS personnel, are also firefighters. They're running the fire calls. They're just having to get there via the EMS rescue truck, but they're still rank and file fire department personnel. They just happen to be assigned to the EMS vehicle. So that's how that works. So in the broader sense, there's no difference as far as the day-to-day operations go. It's just how it's regulated and how certificates are applied.
Okay, so another way to look at this is that fire is regulated through the insurance office at the state level, through the fire marshal's office, all the way down to the state fire marshal in Ocala, down to the fire department, down your local fire department through the county. EMS is regulated and managed through the Department of Health. So it's a completely separate 2 departments in the state, and they have their own regulations, requirements, specifications that we have to adopt on both sides. So if you're a fire department, you look at all the fire regulations from the fire marshal's office. If you're EMS, then you look at the Department of Health and all their regulations. And if you're both, then you have to do both. But the COCPN is the requirement to provide EMS in a particular area, city, or region.
So we're both, right?
We will be both, yes.
And maybe there are some municipalities that separate it
There are many municipalities that separate.
and they get like a private company or something like, I guess,
Broward County, remember years ago, Broward County had their own EMS, which is a whole separate department within the county, and where the fire department was a separate department within the county. They had an EMS department and a fire department, and then about 20 years ago, they merged the 2. There are several counties in the north end that do just that. They have a county EMS and a county fire, and then they run separate. None, the twain shall meet. And then when they work together on auto accidents and stuff, they work, but then they go back to the separate stations. So it's just
but we went this way because.
more efficient.
Okay,
We use our resources more effectively.
okay.
We have people that are trained to do fire and EMS. Fire loading in the town is the fire risk is relatively low because a lot of our high-rise buildings sprinkle, and we have a more senior population, so they're more responsible. Whereas in some of the less socially economic areas of the county, you have more fires because there are space heaters and bad stoves and those kind of things. So, your fire risk varies depending on where you are, where you live in the county or in the state. And by using both resources, we could leverage the personnel to do both and get more bang for the buck, in other words.
So we've been, very concerned about the COCPN, which now I'm getting a better understanding is more on the EMS
Correct.
side. So is there something similar, but on the fire side that we're concerned about? Is there some sort of certificate on the fire side that?
No. There is. We just applied to the state. We have to develop a fire prevention code, which have already been drafted out. That allows us to regulate our fire department and do inspections and submit that to the state fire marshal's office for review. When they send it back to us, then we take it to you as a commission to approve it, and then we're ready to go. The fire prevention code's already been drafted out, given to the city managers, given to the legal department. They'll review it when they've done. The only thing we got to mention here is every 3 to 5 years, the state revises the fire prevention code. So we got to make sure our code is dovetailed nicely and works with theirs. If that happens, then we just get a draft done, send it to the state fire marshal's office. They'll sign off on it, send it back to us, and we're good to go.
Okay, so our fire chief will be focused on fire, and then Dr. Cohen is
No.
the one, no?
The fire chief is responsible for everything that the fire department does.
Everything, okay.
So the fire chief will then have 2 subordinates, a training officer, an EMS official, and a fire marshal. The fire marshal will be concerned with fire prevention, code enforcement, making sure the sprinklers, design for the buildings, and fire protection in this will be his primary focus. The EMS and training officer will be responsible for training the firefighters to make sure they're able to do their job and to meet all the regulatory needs for the EMS certifications and recertifications and paramedic certifications, all that stuff. That'll be his primary function. The fire chief manages those 2 people to make sure everything gets done in a reasonable amount of time, and then reports directly to your town manager, who then reports to you.
Okay. And then at what point in time, you were mentioning there's like 11 attachments that are to this COCPN pilot application. Is the decision made October 31st? Is that when the complete application is due?
Okay. Yep,
What's the
good question. The application period opens in October 1st, and it's said submitted 30 days ahead of time. So we have to have the application submitted to the state by the 1st of September. I like to do it towards the end of August to have that done. I just went through it today, actually. I crossed off out of the 12 or 14 things we have done. There's only 2 things that left that has not been started or is almost finished. We've got protocols, we've got contract licenses, we're just going to decide on the fire transport, EMS transport vehicle today, hopefully get some idea on where we're going to go with that. The only thing that we will not have by October of next year is staffing, and that's because of the cost. And I've already talked to the county about that and said, we understand. We don't want you to put on people for 1.5 years and it's going to be sitting there doing nothing. So that's a huge cost that we're going to defer as long as we can to the startup, maybe 2024, to make that all work, to make it cost effective. So yeah, of those 14 things, probably only 2 things that's left to be started or finished or whatever. We have to have 2 transport units, 1 frontline and 1 reserve. So that's the decision we're going to be making today. At least give us some direction on where that goes. And I think the other thing was that's the only major decision left, and personnel. And we'll put a roster together, but we'll not fill that roster until 2024. So that's the only 2 things that really have not been addressed, started, or in process of being completed.
And they'll start processing the certificate, even though those 2 things will be outstanding.
Well, we've already talked to them about that, and they said that, again, the personnel issue is just the expense of it. And then this fire, if we have a contract to build the 2nd unit, that should be good enough. We'll submit that with the application. Now, we don't have an application yet because they're building a pilot, but I'm getting ready for the full application in case something falls apart. I will be able to give the full application and ask for a abeyance until 2024. So whatever happens, if they don't get their job done, we'll be ready. If they get their job done, we'll accommodate we'll adjust our application to make sure it's ready. So we're looking at all the different.
That's really important what he just said. We're not waiting for them to tell us there's only one way to go. We're doing it. We're covering all the bases. So if they, like he said, don't do their job, we're going to go the other route and be prepared for it too. So.
Right.
So that's your plan B that you're preparing for. So it's due by the end of October. I understand you're compiling it by end of August, but I guess it's due end of October.
The primary is due. We have to submit the primary by the 1st of September.
Okay, so
Or
when,
we review in the 1st of August. That's when October is when they're going to start reviewing them.
okay, so when do you expect to get an answer on whether or not it's approved?
I don't know that there is a question of getting an answer. I think it's a matter of completing the application, submitting it, because we have the right of self-rule. Local jurisdictions have the right to rule themselves. Unless there's a clear, flagrant violation of a particular rule or requirement, there is no that could happen there.
Oh.
It's just a matter of, that's the way I understand it.
That is absolutely correct.
It's not a no, it's like, hey, fix this, or you're missing this, how are you gonna address that? But we have to submit a rock solid application that has all the positions either addressed or complied with, and then we look for their comment.
So
And they have,
I was under the same impression that we were going to get a yes or no.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, me too.
But so they really can't reject us, is what you're saying.
No,
So,
don't
and
get
that's
wrong
where,
here.
and that's where, the pessimist in me always does things looking at it from both sides of that coin. And so as I build this out, I'm in contact with the county. This is so new. Nobody has done this.
Right.
So, and they haven't done, we haven't done, y'all haven't done it, and they haven't done it. There's nobody in that office that has been there more than 5 years that has done this process. So we're kind of helping them with our experience and as a collective, and we're working with this collegially. The best part of working with county emergency management here, as long as I've had my job as an EMS division chief, has been that collegial relationship. And it's always been that check with me type of system, where we would send them, for lack of a better term, that pro forma application in August. And then the staff would look over and say, okay, just make sure you send it to me in time because I can't accept it now. Or, hey, go back and do this with your insurance verification form. Or you notice that, whoever if we're self-insured, get that certificate with the proper date ranging on it. Those minutia type of items within the item is usually where the back and forth takes place. So again, trying to look at it from what's the worst that could happen? I take that tact every time I look at a project like this.
But eventually, after it passes through all of that and gets approved, it then goes to the county commission for final approval. So you're right, there is a final yes, no.
Well, and Natasha this may directly help all of us. I'm going to read from the county. They're saying that the emergency management operations of the county, they issue the COCPNs for EMS providers. Now that includes enforcing Palm Beach County EMS ordinance, blah, blah. Its accompanying rules and regulations, inspecting all EMS providers, ambulances, rescue vehicles, equipment annually, and providing staff support and guidance to the EMS council. Now, this is kind of interesting.
Okay.
They have a 20-member council that serves as an advisory board to the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay, so, and
Now I hand the ball.
you're speaking to the football coach in me. So I like this part of it, actually. Don't get bored, please. So where that works is there is a Palm Beach County EMS Advisory Council that sits and they meet every 2 months. So when these applications come in from the different fire departments to the County Office of Emergency Management, it is those personnel that review those applications in conjunction with the Office of Emergency Management. And then once they say, yeah, go ahead, we can move this to the Board of County Commission, hence Advisory Council. That's when the Board of County Commission then meets and they decide. But it's basically, like you said, a fait accompli because it's already been through EM. It's already been through the Advisory Council who advises the Board of County Commissioners. And then they vote on, they give their final approvals. And the when do we know? By the time the December BCC meeting is over, but well beforehand. I can't, in my career in this county, think of anybody that ever was told no at that meeting. It doesn't happen.
But
So-
December of what year?
That would be December of 2023.
2023. So this
I'm
is
sorry.
being,
December of 2022, yeah. Because that's
Okay.
when the 6-year window opens, is January 1 of 2023. If Commissioner, the ordinance doesn't change, to your point.
But if we do our job,
Okay,
this should be a green path.
You're correct,
Yep.
sir.
we all good?
And to get to
Okay.
that, we're doing
Thank
our
you.
job. I want everyone to understand that. We are doing that.
Okay, let's move on to the vehicle. Thank you, Tom.
I'm up. I guess I'm up again. Let's get the slides. So the manager asked me to give a brief overview of how we're going to select a unit, what are the specifications, and so I wanted to go into a little bit of, not detail, but some basic understanding of how ambulances are built and vendors and what they look like. And so when I say a type 1, you know what you should be thinking in your head. So ambulance vehicles are regulated, and regulation is the force of law by the Department of Transportation and 40 CFR 86, which is the air pollution for new motors. That's for the exhaust systems, diesel exhaust systems. And but the triple K standard, I'll say that, the triple K standard in the DOT basically writes the specifications for all ambulances that receive a Star of Life, which is that Star of Life, that the Star of Life, you can't put it on a unit unless it has met all the requirements of the triple K standard by the DOT. So these are done in 2007 was the last publication of that particular standard, so it's a little dated. Florida statutes 2941 basically has all the inspection, examination, and regulations for paramedics and equipment on the truck and this, that, and the other. So the Florida state also regulates what's on an ambulance, what can be called an ambulance, et cetera, and so on. Because of the legacy of the 2007 Triple K standard, the National Fire Protection Association developed or published a standard for automotive ambulances. And they're a standard because they don't have the force of law, but generally they put recommendations in their document that most of the manufacturers follow. That was published in 2016. And the Commission Accreditation for Ambulance Services they're usually associated with the private ambulance companies published a similar document in 2016. So when you buy an ambulance that's 2016 or 2017 and younger, they would have met all these standards. So, but these standards are not published every year. They're published every few years to make that happen. So according to the Triple K standard, we have 3 types of ambulances, type 1, 2, and 3. Now there's a 4 and a 5, but the 4 is basically for interfacility transfer between hospitals, which we don't do. And then yet there's another standard for aircraft, which we don't fall into as well. So for our purposes, there's type 1, type 2, and type 3. And it's basically developed by the weight of the vehicle and it's how it's constructed. I'll show you pictures in a minute, so I'm not going into more detail than that. So type 1, you have a cab and a chassis with a modular ambulance body. And then the gross vehicle weight it tells is where you make the difference between a type 1A or AD or what have you. Type 2 is a fairly straightforward, it's a long wheelbase van. So most of your AMR units are type 2. They're just a van with a cot on the inside, on all the medical supplies on the inside. And of course, type 3 is the hybrid from the type 1, where the cab and the driver is actually melded to or welded to the body, the modular body. So it's all one unit. Whereas the type 1 is a frame and chassis and a body. This one is all welded together, and you'll see that in just a minute. So here's your type 1 ambulance. Now, most of the vehicles in the county now are some variation of type 1. Boca Raton uses the ones that look like a blue. It's a different vendor, but it's essentially the same thing. They have four doors on the front, and everybody's facing forward. And the modular section where the patient sits is in the back, and that is called a type 1. So these have some advantages because you could buy the powertrain separately and just put a box on top of it, or you could, and if you need to repower it, what we call repowering, say you like some departments run 3,000-4,000 calls a month. You run through the engine and the drive chassis pretty quickly. So instead of buying a whole new ambulance, you just take the chassis out, put the box on a new vehicle, and then you repowered it. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility. On the inside, you'll see that most of your storage compartment on the inside is for medical supplies. The hop system there is just a restraint system. It has an airbag in it for this particular manufacturer puts that in there. You'll see all the compartments on the right and left. They have seats on both sides. On the floor, if you look at the floor very closely, you'll see that that's the cot automatic loading system, which most departments are going to right now. All right, but if you look at the very front, there's no communication between the back. There's only a window that goes between the back of the truck and the driver's section. There's no walkthrough. Whereas with the Type 2, you'll have a walkthrough that goes between the two. That's useful if you have a long transport time and say you have a pregnant woman, she gives birth, the driver will pull over to the side, turn the lights on, and then crawl in the back to help out with the delivery, then crawl back in and drive back to the ambulance. Here, our transport times are so short, 5 to 10 minutes. It's not really a requirement. And if you look at the outside compartments, you'll see that all of the storage for dirty equipment, the self-contained breathing apparatus, the personal protective equipment is all stored on the outside of the vehicle and not on the inside. You want to keep the cab as clean as possible. It's called a clean cab concept. We don't bring anything contaminated into the back for the passengers as well as for the patient. So this is a Type 2 ambulance. It's a van. Don't know why they named it Type 2, should be in Type 1, but whatever, it's the DOT. But you see there's no storage on the outside, so it would not work out well for us. It's cheaper, but it would be a specialized unit only for EMS transfer. We couldn't put bunker gear in there. We couldn't put self-contained breathing apparatus. You couldn't put any tools and equipment on because there's no room for it. All right, so this is Type 2, not really working well for us. This is a Type 3, which looks exactly like the Type 2, except if you look at very closely, the body, the driver section is actually welded to the modular section in the back. That's essentially the only difference. And that allows us to have the walkthrough in the front so that the driver can walk back and front without going outside. So that's the Type 2, and that's the interior of it. Again, all good things. They all work as well. So the most important thing then is let's look at the pricing. Type 1s are usually one from 140 to 202. That's for the base price, just for the module unit, powertrain, and the driver section. Of course, everything in America you could upgrade. Okay, you could get the upgraded suspension systems. You could do privacy glasses. You could do. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you could do to it, and that could raise your price considerably. Actually, the Type 5 and the Type 3, because they're usually bigger, they're 133,000 to 281. Okay, just for clarity, we did not use we didn't call anybody for pricing. We didn't call any vendors. We didn't actually make contact with anybody because of the Sunshine Law. All the stuff was taken off the website or some kind of brochure, so that we make sure we did not preclude anybody from bidding on any kind of RFP if we decide to go that route. So the pricing information was gotten from the Florida Fire Sheriff's Association. They do a statewide bid every year or every few years, and we got those numbers off of that. So just for clarity's sake. So options, different power plants. You could get Dodge, Chevy, or whatever you want. And then you could get the different lengths, different dimensions for height. Most of the departments nowadays are going with the 68 to 74 inch in height in the back because you can stand up in there instead of having to be hunched over all the time. So the dimension of the patient area can vary depending on what your needs are. The storage compartment, size, location, dimensions are all, you could design it to yourself. Color schemes, wireless connections, emergency lights. But the two last are the most important as far as I'm concerned, which is the suspension system and the loading system. The suspension system is important because these, as you can tell, are light trucks or medium-sized trucks. So they ride like trucks. So if you have a regular suspension on there, the patient in back can come 2 or 3 inches off the cop when they hit a bump. So generally you want to put an upgraded suspension system with pneumatic or some kind of, and if you top of the line like Highland Beaches, you can put the adaptive, which is like your Cadillac. So you don't hit a road at all. You just float on a cloud almost. So it would depend on what your needs are and what you're willing to spend to get that level of comfort for the patient. But certainly you don't want to go with the baseline suspension system. You want to upgrade it a little bit. And of course, the automatic cot loading systems are expensive, but then they, back injuries, knee injuries, and those kind of things. Dropping the patient's also very expensive as well. So it's become the standard throughout the county that the ambulances have an automatic loading system to minimize those injuries. Right, so summary of our costs. So our vehicle costs can go anywhere from 140 to 280. So the medical consumable stuff in the back, anything less than, say, $2,000, I didn't consider to be a capital item, so I kind of lumped it to that 17,000. Looking at things like the laryngoscope, video laryngoscope blades, suction units, about 800. So we kind of lump that all into there. The medical supplies, dressings, blood pressure cuffs, and all that stuff add up to around $6,000, and the rest of it is equipment, blood pressure, those kind of things that we kind of lump together. The capital cost is the capital equipment costs for powered stair systems, for the powered cot systems, self-loading systems, can go anywhere from $42,000 to $52,000 per unit. Stair chairs for taking patients down chairs could go anywhere from 7.5 to 8,000. Your heart monitors, there are only two major brands out there, and they run from about 40 to 52,000. And the last one, I don't remember, it just went away. But those we broke out individually because there are long duration items that last more than 5 to 6 years. But portable ventilation units run by 4,500. So our total cost will go anywhere from 230,000 all the way to about 315,000, depending on options and equipment and what you get. Now I put on those the top price, the highest price I found on the internet, and the lowest price I found on the internet. So we'll probably be somewhere in the middle as far as cost goes. So replacement. How often we're going to need to replace those units? On average, in Boca Raton, they run about 2,000 calls per station per month, and we're replacing them between 8 and 10 years. Here we're looking at about 2 to 3 calls per day. Let's say 15 to 30 miles per day times a year. You're looking at 10,000 miles per year. So these are going to last a long time because they're not going to be used that much. Probably you're going to replace them for rust and other things you decide before you're going to replace them for use. So, and then when you have the options for replacing, if you have a modular system like these, you could actually, instead of buying a whole new, you could repower it with the upgraded engine compartment and all that stuff to make it work for you. So my recommendation would be the type 1 modular, and then based on your budget and your needs and your requirements, you fit yourself between the 200,000, mid 2,000, 150,000 for that unit, and that's including all the equipment on it and such. So that's where we are with the numbers as far as fully staffed medical unit can go. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. So am I, but
different sizes, to serve a variety of different
correct.
problems. So, types of calls.
Sure.
Kinds of calls, are they, well, we know we don't have a drug problem. I don't think we have a drug problem. We don't have a lot of down payment getting pregnant. We have overdose with strokes and the, in which case that we kind of define what kind of ambulance we should have along with the apparatus.
I agree with you completely, and that's why I tell you that for those people, I would upgrade the suspension system, make the ride a little bit more comfortable. We still need the compartment space, and that's why we're recommending a modular system for the outside, for the firefighting equipment. And then the inside of the should be well lit and comfortable and have a better ride than the average ambulance. Now, most older cities, Jacksonville, Fort Lauderdale, some areas of Miami, they use the smaller modular ones that I'm recommending because it's narrower streets, porticos, and those kind of things. They're lighter on the road, and so they kind of run better and give you a better, and they're cheaper because of the weight. So that's kind of where I'm at, is a lighter, more maneuverable, more flexible more nimble unit to meet the needs of this community.
Thank you, I'm sorry. So again, the type of problems, health problems we'll have to service with the demographics of our city, given most are over 60. So the kind of equipment needed for a stroke, for a heart attack, is there a comparable town to us with that kind of a demographic profile that has made a decision on this kind of vehicle?
Well, I mean,
That's close by.
close by. I mean, like I said, Fort Lauderdale uses the modular.
But they're a
type
big
one.
city. I mean, and they got other problems. too.
They have the same, any call you go on, you need the same kind of equipment to manage those calls. When you are transporting a patient, the basic requirements for that patient, whether they're 16 years old or 74 years old, is essentially the same. Now, because we're doing, you're saying cardiac and heart and strokes, we run the same, we just need the same kinds of equipment, the same kind of unit, the same stretcher and those kind of things. Your choice has to be, how big do you want your unit to be?
Right.
Based on your roads, based on your porticos and your condos, access, that's the decision you have to make. How big is big enough?
But we need two vehicles, right?
You need at least two minimum.
So you're suggesting getting two type ones?
I'm suggesting that you're gonna get a unit from Delray, that one,
Which is a type
type 3. Yeah.
Big.
It's a big one. So
Yeah,
by
but when
having
we go
this
to
one,
replace it, we replace it with a type 1, and we buy a type 1, that's gonna become our standard for moving
Yeah,
forward.
let me jump in here. We own it. So we already own that one. The recommendations of type 1 makes a lot of sense. In terms of what we put on it, we want to take care of the people in our town.
Exactly.
The average age is 63. If we spent an extra $120,000 in equipment to make it a softer, more comfortable ride for somebody that had a heart attack or a stroke, and the product lasts for
10 years,
12 years or
Yeah.
more, you're talking about $10,000 a year.
it's a no-brainer.
To me, it's not a discussion.
Right.
You get it.
That's really where I was going in terms of.
Yes, I'm just trying to cut it short. That's all.
Okay, well,
Okay.
but I
I
think,
mean, it's like, to me, you don't need it. You got to do it. So you get the best, you make the person the most comfortable you possibly can, because we're talking about amortizing this over 12 years, $10,000 a year, you do it.
right. So I'm saying that discussion is also not just for us, but it's also for the community that's watching as they are trying to figure out, well, why would we order one of these versus another? I totally agree that the one we have is ours.
Well, that's it,
Soon
it
will be ours.
exists.
That's
Yeah.
also a big one, but you know, I am worried about maneuverability within these condos and on those side streets.
Mhm.
So to me, the type 3 is a problem.
So if you go to the very last slide, which I can't show up here, you'll see an ambulance, the very last
Yeah,
slide.
the very last one.
That's the type 1, that's the one I'm recommending. It's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
smaller unit, more nimble, more flexible. It gets in and out of small spaces, and it's easier to upgrade and repower if needed.
So again, I would endorse what the mayor has just said, that in equipping this, I don't mind spending more money, given we're not going to use it that much. We're going to have it for a long time, and we need to show the community that we got the best.
Yeah, we got to take care of our people.
Yes, I
I
mean, if
mean,
you have
they-
a hip fracture,
Okay, 89% voted to spend $10 million.
So the
Got to
need
get the
is
right
there.
products. Okay, thank you.
okay.
Um,
Any other questions?
Evelyn?
Yeah, I completely agree that if we're doing this, let's do it right. We're spending a lot of money and it makes no sense to cheap out. And I would get the best ventilator. But
He was all over it.
you know, we want to save lives and that's the bottom line, but we also don't want people jostled on the way to the hospital
Have a heart attack on the way.
because there are potholes, there are problems. We want to be able to maneuver in traffic because people are not always considerate. And my only question is, what size? I'm looking here at the different lengths, and what you said was they're going for higher headroom. But the higher headroom also looks like it comes with a longer cab.
That's where the town manager is going to tell me, Glenn, you need to spend that. This is what I want. This is what I need. And that's what, unless you want to give me that direction, I think.
Well, I think you'll find commissioners and this commission and any fire chief are probably gonna be in the same spot to get the best equipment possible to serve the needs of the community.
So Commissioner, to your point, you could come on.
You know, he's got
You could very easily have a crew that
You're
was
taking a partner here?
that is 6'2" and
whatever I am.
very low 6'1". So you need that headroom. You need to maneuver. I mean, and to your point, you have to have that passion that you can get your folks in the back of that truck to deliver the best quality of service in the back of that truck. That means getting the best equipment that we're looking at, we're speccing out. That is to give the best possible ride that we can have. Now, ordinarily, you'd have maybe 2 paramedics in the back of the truck or 1 with the trip to the hospital. But man, if you got to get 3 paramedics in the back of that truck, you're going to want that room. And that's how we say in the EMS field, Mrs. Smith gets the win. And that's because the city has equipped and empowered staff to get out there and give Mr. and or Mrs. Smith that win. And that's as we see these purchases, whether it's the truck, the equipment we put on it, and trust me, when we look at the people we're going to put on these trucks, it all matters. It's all mission critical as part of the equation.
I agree with everything you've just said. We have to do it the right way. When you're only buying 1 or 2 units, you need to get the best. If you've got a dozen, maybe they don't all need to be the best. Thank you.
Peggy?
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, I would certainly take the gentleman's list of necessary equipment and have them guide us into what we are actually going to employ. Is there anyone, we'll get to the point that we put out bids and so forth, but do you have a list of definite inclusions for this vehicle? Do you have something you would recommend to the town manager and commission?
We know what we want.
You probably know what we need.
And I, like I said, in the numbers, I gave you the widest possible range because I didn't want to narrow the manager down to any particular numbers, but certainly where we're going to be somewhere in the middle of the numbers you see on the board. For instance, the heart compression device is 15 or 16,000. More than likely, we're going to go with the $15,000 one, although it's cheaper, it's actually better than the more expensive one. So that's why you hired us, is to give you some guidance as what's the best and how to make the best decisions with the money allocated.
Got it. And is there, does idling outside of the hospital for durations of time, does that put any kind of a wear and tear on the engine?
Absolutely. But
because I've seen them idle for long periods of time. And
I did a study in Boca while I was there, and 60% of fuel use is in idling, because we do a lot of that, you hurry up and wait kind of thing. There are ways to addressing that. All of those, I'll talk with the managers to see if that's the direction he wants to go. We tend to have to let the truck run on scene because when you're using all the lights and all the equipment, the batteries tend to drain down. If you turn it off, you may not restart. So as a general rule, when we get to a scene, we don't want to turn the engine off. We want to let the battery charge while it's sitting there waiting. Then you can put an auxiliary power plant on there to do that for you. And but that's a design thing that we have to talk about, balancing the needs of the many and the cost of the money that we have on hand. So there are other ways of addressing that. It's just that's a decision that the manager and as a commission you'll make based on your budget.
okay, yeah, thank you. I thought that might be a concern. And lastly, just as an aside, where would we gas the vehicles?
Manager?
Did we set up an account somewhere? I just wondered how that
Well,
would happen.
Because
Related to that though, is it gas? Is it diesel,
It's diesel.
or is it hybrid?
It's more than likely it's going to be diesel, especially for the engine, fire engine, because you need the power per unit of fuel. gas doesn't really work for fire trucks, and hybrids, there's some of them out there, but not many. Not even using looking at compressed gas, and so, but those are all new technologies which you don't really want to invest in unless they are well vetted. Fuel would be simply going to your local vendor, getting a gas card, and go to Delray, stop by, top it off, that kind of thing. But more than likely, it's going to be a diesel engine, unless battery technology changes dramatically in the next few years. I don't see it becoming the primary source of power for a emergency vehicle.
Okay, thank you very much again.
I think everything you said made a lot of sense to me. I think the point you make about the modular, that when the cab goes bad, but the back is still good, you can just repower it with something else. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think we're going to have to rely on what you recommend. I don't know that we really know, but I guess you're getting direction from us that we want the type 1 and we want, the good equipment, comfortable equipment, how you mentioned the suspension and the loading systems.
Yeah, what Tom and I are here to do, and that's what I see myself doing, is I give you the best options for the money you have to spend.
Right.
And so you'll rely on my experience, and I will not come into you and say, I want this because I want this. I'll tell you, this is the reason why you need to have this. And these are the pluses, this is the minuses, this is what it costs. And you make a decision about how much you want to spend. That's generally how it works. And even if you have a fire chief, that's what the fire chief is going to come. He's going to come with a list of things he wants, and he's going to say, okay, this is why I need this. And the manager's going to say, yeah, you can have this, but you can't have that. You can have this, you can't have that. And that's how the negotiation happens. So I'm here to give you my experience and my input, and I will give you a rational reason, not a I need or I want, for anything that we request. And then you have to decide whether that need meets the threshold of a need or a want. That's where you decide. So that's how it works.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm in favor of your recommendation. And I guess my one question to Marshall is it fitting within our budget? I was trying to find the.
Totally. We're great.
It's fitting within the budget. I don't remember what we budgeted for the one truck, but.
It is. It's in the price range. We'll see what it finishes out with whatever the luxury soft ride or whatever he's talking about works out to. The Charmin ride, but
the Cadillac.
But it's in the budget. Some of those items we accounted for in different line items, like the power chairs. We kind of took that as different types of equipment, but it's folded into the cost of the truck. So when that won't be, we accounted for it, but just not as on the truck as much as we said we need, heart monitors, X number, whether you put it on the truck or not, we knew we needed to buy it. So it's not accounted for there, but we have all of those dollars. So everything's good. And we had a lot of discussion on our internal group. The type 1 is so we can get to the door. I want to be able to pick people up at their door versus we got to reel you down a incline and
in the rain.
Yeah. We want to pick you up at the door and throw you in the unit and place you in the unit. Sorry. And then take you off to the hospital. So that's the idea of the type 1. We can get everywhere.
That makes sense.
Saves time.
Yeah.
That's the key. Are you done?
I'm good.
I'm sorry. Would you take a few moments and update the group on the market itself for these vehicles in terms of there is a possibility, not that it's a 50% chance, but a possibility that when the time comes, there may be alternative ways of purchasing this?
Sure. Yes, I can. In fact, Tom's done most of the research on it, so I'll just open it up. I'll open the discussion, and then I'll let him take over. Our probably recommendation would be there are many vendors in Florida that build those ambulances. Off the top of my head, and this is not an inclusive, Braun is making an excellent unit. AES makes a very good unit. Horton makes another great unit. So they're all in Florida. And so what we're probably going to do is look at what they put out as far as their equipment and make a price conscious cost of the different equipment. And it's been recommended we get maybe a broker that could talk to all the different vendors. Maybe there's something on the yard that we could look at. Maybe there's something that just been built, or they're building something, or somebody's late on the payment and they've repoed it and fits our needs. So all those things that they take into consideration when we go to actually take possession. But we want to spec out our needs first, have it written down, So we know a gem when we see it, and we're not jumping on the first, a fake cubic zirconia that we see. We want to make sure we know that what we're looking for, that when we see it, we know that's what we want. I'll let Tom tell you more details about that.
Sure, thanks. So generally what happens is, and I'm gonna use a phrase, once you hang your shingle. So once you have Town of Highland Beach Fire Rescue Services Department and you're up and running, or it gets out there that, hey, these guys are real hot come May 1 of 2024, what happens is you start receiving cold calls. You start getting somebody rolling up on your front door with a beautiful truck that they built on a spec, or as Glenn said, somebody just backed out of the deal for whatever reason. And these folks do their homework. They're not going to roll up to the town of Highland Beach with something that the council in this meeting has expressed would want no part of putting one of their citizens in the back of. These folks do their homework. And again, that EMS community that we have here within the state helps with that. It helps broker those conversations. It helps putting you in that spot to where when Wheeled Coach, for example, in Riviera Beach years ago, we were in the process of looking at a new international chassis because we weren't happy with another brand. So the vendor just showed up on our doorstep and said, hey, would you guys want this? And it had the brand new engineered ride on it. We had train tracks, we had bridges, Singer Island at that point, some of the roads needed some repair. So it actually worked to our benefit that we got that vehicle at one heck of a good discount because of our relationship that the EMS chief at the time had with that community. So now you get to move that forward. So you have all these sales folks, you have all these vendors, you have these manufacturers, and like Glenn said, you have these brokers too that'll work in the middle, and they'll work out that conversation with, hey, would it be okay? We just spec this unit. We weren't happy with it. We made some changes. We're not going to sell it to ABC Fire Department. Would you guys want us to bring it by to take a look at it? And things like that happen all the time. These things really do fall from the sky and land in your lap more often than you would think. And for all the reasons that Glenn had espoused.
Great, thank you.
You got it.
Bottom line is, when the time comes, we might get lucky, save a few dollars, as long as we're flexible. Okay?
Does that apply to the police boat too?
That's a done deal. But our board did agree to donate the slip and the electricity. That's done. So anytime, it's there waiting for you. Okay, let's move on and take a look at the new fire station.
Excuse me, that's the Dalton?
That's Boca Highland.
Boca Highland.
Yeah, we have the marina.
I see, very nice. All right.
So
I didn't
it's
know.
ready to go. Okay, Marshall, you want to make some introductions?
Yeah, so Joby from P-Gal is going to go through our presentation today. So we have some preliminary layouts and costs as it relates to what we see are basically the three options that exist. We'll go through the pros and cons. I will jump in from time to time to express some strong opinions I have, just so you are aware that there's a couple of cons that I think you're really going to need to hold on to and think about in the long term of this that really will drive some of our decisions. I think I know where you're all going to land. I'm not going to foreshadow it, but we have the three options, the cost estimates, and they'll go through the planning steps that went into it, the layout, the sizing, scope, blah, 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 all those details. So Joby, if you want to just take it from here and we'll just start walking through it.
Thank you, Commission, and for this opportunity to present where we have gotten to in relation to the fire stations. We've had a very good productive meetings with city staff and looking at basically the existing station, basically the parking lot you have out in front, the presence, the importance of the presence of the city hall. We basically saw three basic options. The first option that we'll basically walk through is what we call the classic rebuild. The classic rebuild is going to actually require a temporary station to be constructed on an adjacent site. That'll allow us to basically build, if we want to go ahead and proceed to the next. Thank you.
For the record, can you just state your name? For the record.
Yeah, My apologies. I should know better. I'm on a board too. And it's like first thing, it's like we start to talk and then we fail to introduce ourselves. So my name is Joby Ballant. I'm an architect with PGL Architects, right here in Boca Raton, 791 Park of Commerce Boulevard, Suite 400. So.
Yep.
Okay. So basically what we're looking at with the classic rebuild is we would be looking at an addition onto the station, and that would actually be your 3 new apparatus bays. With that, we would also renovate the existing station. And we would, because right now the existing station is below flood level, we would actually raise the floor, finished floor of the existing station so that the living quarters are above a finished floor. So basically we're looking at a 4,800 square foot gross of addition, a 3,700 in renovation. That will give you an 8,600 square foot station total. Basically the pros and the cons, if we look at, yeah, basically. Now the cons, like I say, again, requires a temporary station. You have no option for any administration offices. This is a straight classic fire station rebuild renovation. And there's also, again, no administration space, conference space. It's just typical classic fire station. We ran through a basic program. Now, again, we're presenting 3 options. I don't want you to get too in the weeds as to what's actually in each building, because the reality is once we have that direction between the options, again, we will sit down with staff and we're going to iron out the actual details, the flow. And this is just taking our expertise of multiple years of doing fire stations. So basically we're using about a $450 square foot on brand new construction. That is something right now, currently we feel very comfortable with in today's market, and using 250. So on the renovation. So basically when you look at, and I'll just get to basically the grand total. Basically, we're looking at a $4.5 million station in a classic rebuild. So again, as I pointed out, we'll have 3 brand new bays. The bays will be sized to current and expected fire vehicle sizes. Again, the living quarters and everything would be revamped in the existing station, again, putting that above the floodplain. Of course, there is another con I forgot to point out. This is a back-end station, and back-end stations are usually not typically desired by fire.
Excuse me.
Yes.
The cost estimate doesn't include the demo of the existing, nor does it include the cost to house the people while this is being built.
There really is the site demolition. There is a cost. We're estimating around 600,000 for site.
That's on top of the 4.4.
That's including the 4.5 million.
It is.
And about
Okay.
750,000 for a temporary station. Now, remember, in a temporary station, again, I don't want to get into weeds.
I see it right here. Okay.
Yes. It's basically, it's there, it's done, and it's gone. So that's the downside of having to construct a temporary station.
Say that once more.
With a temporary station, we have to relocate the staff into, is basically what it is. It's just temporary. It's basically portable type buildings that meet the hurricane codes. It's just enough to meet the needs while this station is being constructed.
Yeah, and this is where one of those times I'm going to jump in. This is a very tricky thing to pull off. One is, in order to do and execute this before we go live, we're going to have the agreement of Delray to move their entire operation to an alternate site. They have to agree to it. I don't know how well that'll go. Second, we got to find that site. The only thing we really have is Milani Park. We have to go to the county and ask for permission to utilize that site, whatever those requirements and timelines are. On top of that, it's below grade. So like he was saying, it has to be hurricane ready and flood resistant. So basically, we're going to have to bring that site way up. It's going to have multiple trailers. It's going to have canopies to keep the vehicles covered. I got to get a sewer lead. I got to get a water lead. it's a very difficult process and most likely wouldn't be allowed to occur until we take over
How
in May.
how much space is required?
Pretty similar to the space you have now.
Correct.
How
So
much?
basically you have a daytime trailer and then you'll have a nighttime trailer. If you want to think of it in simplistic terms, nighttime trailers where they would bunk and shower. The daytime trailers where they'd have like their meals, be ready to sit, watch room, captain's chamber kind of scenario.
So we need water, we need electric. we need-
Mhm. And then you know what we also need, which is not always easy on the island, and this is where Teresa starts to shake, is fiber. We're gonna have to get conductivity to the site too, and then tie that all the way back into our system here to then be yet relayed back to the county dispatch. So I think Joby's estimate's probably pretty accurate, about 750 plus or minus. Probably more of the plus is what we'd have to think here on the island. And it's money that's lost. It's a sunk cost that we don't get back. And then the secondary to that that goes into our appropriation request, which Commissioner Gossett-Simon's about to attack here in a couple of weeks, is predicated on us having an EOC. That design does not have an EOC in it, and it doesn't have administrative space. We don't have a lot of space left. We took one of our conference room to turn it into a couple offices. It doesn't account for all the fire administrative staff. So the classic rebuild leaves us empty on a couple big spots. And if we were to expand it to include the administrative and EOC space, which would be about 1,000, 1,500 square feet, you're now up and over $5 million project at that 450 square. So it's tricky, I think. And again, I'm not trying to lead you to what's next, but when we're missing those type of components and the delays and multiple parties that are required to negotiate to pull this off, it makes it a very difficult alternative. Maybe not to design. Correct. 100% confident Joby and his team will design this thing without a problem, but we're going to come up short with offices. We're not going to have an EOC.
So regardless of the cost, it doesn't work.
Well, again, we want to show that we did look at all options, and that's in options.
Yeah, I mean, I don't I'm not trying to attack you.
Correct.
I'm just saying this option doesn't work for us.
From my opinion, I would say it doesn't, without additional items added to it, which then would naturally take you to one of the other alternatives really to meet our needs.
And the likelihood, Mayor, is, as I think you already sense, it's going to be closer to 5 million. I'm not 4.5.
Yeah, but 5 million is okay. That fits within our original plan. But I mean, I hate to say this, but we only get 2 offices. We get everything, but only 2 offices.
No conference space, no EOC we need.
Yeah,
And I think EOC is, from everything I'm learning from Chief Hartman, is going to be a real critical when we
Important.
both have complete public safety. So
Okay, so let's just move on then.
Yeah, it's long-term. So just, real quick, basically everything stays on the north side of your site. Just to give you an idea of massing, still you have the visual of the city hall coming from the south, street level from the south. And then coming from the north, how the new fire station would look in that sense. So let's look at what we call option 2. This is a kind of a hybrid. And what it is it's a 2-bay addition on the south side of your existing station. It would be a 2-story addition. And then we would do just basically minor interior renovations. It's a kind of a hybrid of mix. Basically, you get about 13,000, almost 13,500 gross square foot total between existing and new. We're probably looking at around 5 million in budget. This would not require a temporary station. So as we look at the basic layout, what we're basically doing is we're designing 2 brand new bays on the south side of the station. It will also be sized for, the equipment and everything else. You have a lobby that's more on the south side to greet your public. That's where, you can also take that up to the 2nd floor. You would maintain your existing 2 bays in the existing station. And then basically we would just have to do some minor interior renovations. So if we look at the 2nd floor, this is where we can get into some administrative space. So here we can give you some offices, open space, basically a couple private rooms related to EOC functions, a conference, a reception. So it kind of gives you both administrative for fire. It gives you that space, allows you not have a temporary station, but again, allows you to keep some of the existing. Now, we'll just take some quick look at the massing. Again, similar to what you have now. I mean, we will have to do some modification of the parking lot, but again, we're still keeping everything to the north side of your site. Again, you can see the massing from looking from the south. From the street level again. This would be looking again from looking south on A1A. And again, we can actually, at this point, now that we do a nice two-story addition, it starts to get a presence. It kind of also has an administrative kind of look to the second floor versus the ground floor. So one thing I probably didn't hit, and I probably, my apologies, is probably the pros and cons for this particular site. Because right now, I think the only thing I pretty much hit was the fact that you would not need a temporary station. Apologies. Again, the pros, we actually give you a second floor with some EOC space, some administration space. The cons, there's minimal changes to the existing station. It still leaves the living quarters below flood. That is a con. The other con is the fact that we actually split the functions of the station. So for the newer equipment, yes, you can have everything into the bigger bays. You can still run your EMS out of the bays to the south because they're a little bit smaller. They'll actually work with those types of equipment. But again, it means split bunker gear, split supplies, split storage. Just doesn't have the clean flow, but I see it as an alternative to the classic teardown.
There's no way to put the second level on the existing.
Based probably on age, it is a solid building, but I probably would not feel comfortable without getting serious structural engineering to examine the drawings and actually look a little deeper if that's even possible.
I'm just saying from an appearance standpoint, architecturally of the whole complex.
Correct. Could it possibly be raised and maybe a false roof to maybe give it a little bit more height? But then that's again added cost.
Well, that's why I was saying, could we put the second level on it?
Based upon the age.
And not this.
With a building in probably the 90s, I probably am not comfortable because most likely they were not designed for second floors. If the documents ensured that the footings and everything else had that reassurance, then I would say yes, with extreme confidence. My confidence is just low because of the premiums that you would have to then reinforce that facility, let alone the idea is if you keep it to avoid the temporary station, then that's why we could build to the side. If you try to build over, then you basically got to evacuate the same tenants and then you're back to possibly doing a temporary station. So that would always have to be weighed in.
I was thinking if we did that, you would build the new 1 story based on this to the left.
Right.
Move the current equipment into the new.
Mhm.
And then we wouldn't have to worry about it because they would then be using the equipment on the new and that
The
vacate
equipment,
there and then build.
yes, but the living quarters still remain in the existing station. So the bunk rooms, the office, and the kitchen still remains in the existing facility.
Or you could move them up, right? I don't understand why you can't move them up. If you're building the second floor,
Yeah, building a second floor over where the vehicles are.
But it's a two station, so it'll be short two bays, or at least one big bay to put the rescues in, because we have 4 pieces of equipment when we take over.
Yeah, but we're putting the second floor over the 2 existing bays.
No,
No, the 2 new bays.
I understand what you're proposing. I'm just saying that the con is right now to find a hybrid with not having to avoid a temporary station. We're able to build the 2 new bays and you can still function out of the fire station. Then the apparatus could move, but however, the bunk rooms, the kitchen, the day room still remains in the existing
Yeah, well,
station.
they're
So
in the lower section there.
Right.
of the existing building,
We're not touching that. We're just
interior
building-
renovations.
Just building the second level over the 2 old bays. So we're not affecting the living section or the kitchens, et cetera. Maybe it doesn't make any sense. That was if you found that they were secure enough to build on top.
Yeah, correct. And I guess the question is the amount of square footage and the space that you would claim for the administrative spaces with the additional elevator, the extra stairs.
Yeah, I don't know.
Does
that
all
it's
those
worthwhile.
efficiencies? Yeah,
If it was, I'm just talking because
Yeah.
of the aesthetics
correct.
and the fact that it's, I mean, it's just out of balance, the way it
Correct.
looks now.
Correct.
That's all. Just take a peek at it. You know, if after 15 minutes say it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Well, I don't understand. I think the mayor's onto the right track where as you build the 2 bays next to the existing building, you can put our trucks in there
Sure.
and then build on the second floor that could house the living quarters, right, the bunks and all that, even above the existing one. And then as you finish that, then you move them upstairs and you then renovate the first floor of the existing building.
And he's saying there's 2 possible problems. One is that possibly it can't carry the weight,
Can't,
1. And 2, it might also affect the current living quarters. So he's got to take a peek at it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
it would seem you'd be able to put enough reinforcing to hold a second floor in the existing building without it being a big, I mean, as much as it's going to cost
If
to
it's,
build
is
a new
it truly based on the aesthetic? The conversation we're having is more of the aesthetic than
That's all it is. Just as,
because on the middle piece, you could put an outdoor living area on top of it and then put a false front a little bit to give an architectural element, but it could be an outdoor living space that they don't currently have at that station. So they could have a couple of outdoor dining tables, maybe some of that CrossFit they love doing.
The
And things.
problem is the height.
But you put a fake up in between the 2, so you don't see the drop in the roof line. There could be some architectural elements,
Well,
for the lack of better words, but
no, that's not the problem. The problem is when you look, well, these pages aren't numbered, but if you look at the page, it says the aerial view 2-bay addition. That gives you a sense of what this is going to look like. And the town hall is off to the left. And now you're looking at this large structure, which is the new. That's obviously 2 stories. And it sticks out like a sore thumb, which is basically what it is and what we need. And we're taking care of the need, but I don't think we're going to like the look of it when we drive by on A1A. So that's why I was always saying, is there a way to reverse it and put it at the north end? That's all. If it can't be done, it can't be done within our budget.
Mayor, this is Sam Ferrari. I don't know if you can hear me or not, and I apologize. I couldn't be there today. I'm on the West Coast, but
Hey,
I've been
Sam.
listening in. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. I apologize. I have had a planned vacation. I'm on the West Coast, so but I just I've done a little bit more of the research on the structure of the existing. The low part, the bays on the north, they're structured pretty mightily, and it really just has to check the foundations if we could go up. The portion, the south end of the existing station is wood frame roof. So basically, that would be similar to what we showed in option 1, where we were basically tearing that element down and rebuilding it. We could do that and go up 2 stories there. We could also put the living quarters above, on the second floor above the bays. And when Joby shows you the third scheme, we've kind of done a portion of that. So, but again, we understand the aesthetics. These are no means the design of the building. We wanted to really show you the massing because we are concerned also that that large two-story element kind of right in the middle of things, it just isn't cohesive with the rest of the architecture as you have at the existing town hall.
True.
Well, I'm glad we're in agreement.
Definitely
But
looks out of bounds.
Joby, why don't you show them the third scheme, which is a totally new building? And again, that could be moved to different portions of the site, but it kind of gives you a little bit difference of the organization.
Yeah, so let me look at, so the third option, which I think is, I would say definitely thinking outside the box, but at the same time, I think also has a lot of pluses. Basically, we're looking at this time in the third option, we're looking at a 14,000 gross square foot building. We would have the 3 bays, again, looking at a 2-story, and again, it's the priciest, and we're looking at about a 6.9 million. But let's just, like I say, we're more concerned about the massing and the overall organization. So in this instance, we're actually looking at a station that actually sits in front of City Hall. Again, it allows it to be constructed without needing to construct a temporary station. We have 3 bays actually sized with the typical 14 by 14 openings. But in this case, they're actually drive-through bays, which is actually a better condition. We have basically, we have some multi-purpose, we got some living quarters, again, adjacent. We go to the second floor, we can have, again, our living quarters. Again, that serves basically a fire station. However, we actually can open it up to create a new chamber space. And again, that'll actually allows you to get a whole new massing, a whole new presence along A1A. And then when you go to the site, the existing station would become your parking. Again, thinking outside the box for a third option. Gives you an idea of the massing of how it look in an aerial. What you might see if you're heading south. And what you might see if you're heading north. And basically those were the three basic options. One is the classic, rebuild with a temporary. Second option is sort of in the middle with a sort of renovation and addition. And the third option, which is a complete, brand new station, but actually on the south side of your site.
Comment?
We can't afford it, so why are we going to spend any time talking about it?
Well, to me, it's too expensive. It's too big. It's right smack in front of the town hall. And we got that big water tank exposed. I just think it looks terrible, although the flow of the vehicles through the drive-through, that's ideal. All right. But that's the only thing that's ideal.
Well, I think between that and again, you're elevating, you're getting everything above your floodplain, you're getting the administration offices. That opens up the existing chambers to be converted into some additional administration offices. There's also the possibility that you could also shell what would have been the chamber space. Again, granted, I hear you, and this is strictly, we're looking for your thoughts, your comments. This is just massing. This is by no means meant to be the end all final.
Okay, I mean, we'll certainly pass around so every commissioner can make their comments, but one, it's grossly overpowering. This is not, this is a fire station with a town hall attached to it. And it's significantly over the budget. So unless anybody has any other comments that they want to make on this, let's move on to what's realistic.
What is our budget for the build?
$5 million.
It is 5. It's a hard
We're right
one.
around there. So we're talking
Yeah.
4.5 to 5.5 is finished out and is where we would be because this doesn't include design costs, but the $5 million is in the contract, which we approved. So there wouldn't be a lot of change orders or any change orders from the designers to do it in that wheelhouse. And again, this is a very preliminary, there's always steps to value engineer. We don't want to do that yet. But this kind of gives us the ideas of where we're at.
I mean, even if it was within our budget, I would not like it because of what I said earlier.
Mayor,
Yeah.
I just don't want to repeat what some people consider 20 years later a mistake, where the original design of the library was 2-story. And we're talking 25 years ago. And it was reduced to 1-story by the then commission. And 10 years go by and they said, gee, we should have made it 2-story to provide more parking and more meeting space. So I just want to be cognizant of that maybe we can work on a compromise here and just don't throw something out because we view it as too expensive, when in 10, 20 years, maybe they'll say, oh, we should have done a bigger station. Just want to bring that up. Thanks.
Well, let me respond to that. We told our voters we would do this for $10 million. If you spend this shows a budget of almost 7 million, and that doesn't include some other things.
I know.
And
just
I got to
saying.
tell you, if it was for free, I wouldn't want to do it.
I understand. I'm just saying, bringing that up, and just maybe there can be a compromise between 2 and 3.
Well, okay.
And a compromise would be having a second floor, I think is what you're.
Well, no, we have to have a second
We
floor.
have to have a second floor, so I don't understand what the compromise would be.
Okay.
Mayor, this is.
Anybody want to add anything before we move on? I'm sorry?
Mayor, this is Sam.
Oh,
Ferrari.
yeah, go right ahead. Sorry.
Listening to you and the commission, I think we can go back and look at another option to do a 2-story similar to the footprint of concept 2. What I would recommend is the potential to build just a little to the south of the existing station, not touch it, and potentially look at it with a 2-story scheme, and then look at maybe even tearing down the old station or tearing down a portion of it to get some parking for your fire staff, because in all of these schemes, there's really no parking for anyone. So we could look at that. We could come back with a couple more, and we could have them for your first meeting in January, just to look at, or have staff share with you without a formal meeting. We just want to get into position for, so we can start the design, and we kind of know a direction. So, but this is great feedback today. This is the whole reason we did this. We were pretty sure you weren't going to be comfortable. There might have been bits, parts, and pieces. But I think the two things that, in talking with Marshall, that I think are critical are, we know with your current contract, we really can't touch the station unless we create a temporary station to move them. That is very costly. That's about $750,000 with that one site you have, based on our experience with temporary stations, and then all the infrastructure with the site, with the fill, and that you'd need to do. And then the other is, build the station without interfering with your existing operations in that contract. And that would have to be in the parking lot, maybe just south of the existing station, so it's not as prominent. And then either tearing down the existing building at the end, or tying it together architecturally. And what's interesting is your existing station, there was a renovation in addition to it in 1996. And it had a whole new roof on it. It was all slope roofs. It was tile. There's no history to tell us why they didn't do it. I don't know if it was value engineering, or it was because they couldn't take the load of that additional roof on top of it. So we can do a little bit more research there.
Marshall?
From what I can see, I'm gonna go with Sam. I think I don't know if that it was truly all value engineered out. I think there's some loading issues. And even some preliminary conversations I've had with Pat, being here for all those years, that he's kind of a little nervous that some of that old building can't be holding that load of a second floor. Maybe you could do it over the current bays, but again, those bays need to be lifted anyway, and it's narrow. So you're only going to be able to fit rescues in there. So you're not going to fit so there might be something in between that might exist. But I think our desire for, a lot of options is we all kind of know we're kind of limited by what we have here. We have some
Agreed.
limitations no matter what. So,
Yeah, no, this is a real challenge. No,
Yeah,
I agree.
it's gonna be tricky. Try to figure out how we pull this off with,
Okay, well, we got a good start.
One question. We're only talking about 2 floors. Would it reduce the footprint of the building, because we need ground space, even if it's for parking vehicles, if we put a 3rd floor on? A 3rd floor.
I don't know. That's
The third-
interesting.
Okay,
Do construction costs go up if you do a lower footprint, but go to a 3rd floor?
At 2 to 3, it's probably all going to round out. I would just say, it all depends upon the program needs and what's on the ground floor versus the 2nd floor versus the 3rd floor. Typically with fire stations, you don't want to take any living quarters or anything beyond the 2nd floor. So if something's going to be on the 3rd floor, it's probably going to be the administrative space, the ELD
Right.
space. It's going to, that's what you would probably put on the 3rd floor.
Yeah.
an idea of,
Interesting
again,
idea.
reduce the footprint, because we don't have much space out there underground, and you do have vehicles. I don't want this to just overpower the town hall. And we also don't want to obstruct the roadway going into the library, and you want easy access to A1A. So I get, we have 4 vehicles backing in now into the garages, but it would just seem that the 2nd floor always is going to be the living quarters, and they can drop down the pole or whatever. But on the 3rd floor, it's all the administrative, all the apparatus, the storage and all that sort of thing. It would seem to me we could do that, because we have to put a new walls up in any event for a 2nd floor versus what we have now.
Correct.
So,
It's a balancing act.
okay.
you can make it look like a lighthouse, huh?
Mayor,
A lighthouse.
NORAD's calling.
Mayor, I wanted to ask Pat Roman, our utilities director, isn't the south end of our existing building, isn't that date back to the 70s? That's the original building. So that's right, but the old building is still there from the late 70s, early 80s. That's what I thought. So, and that's where the wooden roof structure is. All right. And then secondly, do any of these site plans really count the number of parking spaces that each one would allot, or
We're gonna lose parking.
remove, or, pardon?
We're losing
it no
parking.
matter what. Okay.
And again, that's probably one of the more precious things we have on the island is
Right.
parking. I don't know how the news station I thought might have their best chance of preserving, if not slightly expanding parking, not by a lot. But again, the cost is so high, it really pushes our ability on budget purposes to pull it off. So.
So that means taking out all the greenery, the fountain, all of that, right?
Well, I'm not too worried about that because that can all be redesigned to look appropriate. Some of but again, the parking is going to be.
But that's the only place you could expand in.
I mean, you can put a couple
additional
more parking spots in, but I mean, you're going to be losing. It's a net loss of parking,
Okay.
which is just challenging no matter what.
I understand it, but that has to take a back seat to whatever our best fire station design is going to be.
Boca Highland's going to give us free parking on.
Yeah, as long as you're.
Highland
willing to
Beach
walk.
Club's going to give us some stuff, right? Some property.
Okay. Anything else on this? Okay.
So we got some direction then.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the direction.
You bet. Okay, we're going to move on. Next is B under new business, can be found on page 11. Approve and authorize town staff to purchase an annual supply of corrosion inhibitor. Come on down. What do you need that for?
Which chemical are you talking about? We need them both.
You want to cover them both at one shot?
Let me get to it here.
We're starting with corrosion inhibitor.
The corrosion inhibitor we use in the water treatment plant for our distribution system. It coats the pipes and stops corrosion in the distribution system and in homes, copper pipes and all that. That's what it's for. We use it, I mean, we've been using it since the plant started. Of course, prices went up on everything tremendously. That's why and we shopped around for the corrosion inhibitor. We had 4 bids, and come to find out they had to be sealed bids. So we piggybacked the lowest one that we found. However, we did piggyback the lowest price out there. And then
You want to cover the sodium
the sodium
hydroxide? as well?
hydroxide, we use in the scrubber system to get out the hydrogen sulfide that comes out of the water, out of the drinking water.
Okay, and in both cases, they're both a year supply.
Yes, they're both a year supplies, and they're piggybacked off the lowest contract we can find in the state of Florida.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on it? No? No, John? Nothing?
I could comment that this is like chemical warfare. Yeah, and all designed to have a good taste in our mouth.
Roughly how much are they up over last year? Do you recall?
I don't have those figures with me, but they're up over 20% on
They are.
every bit of that,
Yep.
like everything else in the country.
Okay, we need a motion.
I move we approve the purchase of both the,
You could technically say
You can just say
item
new.
11B.
okay. I move we approve item 11B and item 11C.
Perfect.
Second.
All in favor, just say aye.
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 Okay, let's move on to, well, item D was the agreement with PACE. We removed that from the agenda. So we can move on now to the approval of commission meeting minutes. Anybody have any comments on the November 9th? I have a comment on, I noted page 149, so we can look at that. No, I'm sorry, I didn't have a comment. It's just on page 149. And November 16th is on page 154. If anybody has a comment, once, twice.
Nope.
Gone. Need a motion.
I move we accept the minutes for the November 9th, 2021 meeting and the November 16th, 2021 meeting as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, move on to comments. John, do you have any?
Yes, I always have comments. I've had a conversation brief with our town manager, Liberty, about the veterans and the tab for the website. We're falling behind in the schedule. It's somewhat disappointing, but I also know that we've had a whole lot of other priorities and we're under the gun. So I'm going to see if we can propose a new way of going forward, whether that's spending some money or whether it's getting it more of a priority with PACE. But we need, we're not going to meet this year. The deadline I thought we had for December, let alone December 31st, it's going to move into January. I'd like to see more progress on that. And so that's something that I'm going to be working on. So I don't have good news there. I do have good news in that the Mingle Jingle, I have to tell you, I have been getting a stream of constant input saying how effective that was and what a great action to do. And people really do like it and would like to see more of that kind of activity going forward. It was really a great opportunity to bring the town together with a positive feeling. We did have a bit of a problem with COVID, just pass on. With snowbirds coming into town, some have brought with them the Omicron virus. We had a kind of a mini outbreak in one area of the town. So it is, I think, a positive thing that I've talked to no less than 15 people with Omicron, all mild symptoms. Most were over 60 years of age and, headache, Only one, the most serious symptoms was a particular woman who was throwing up. But passed in 3 days, it was gone. So it's mild. It's nothing like the Delta fear that we hear about in the media all the time. And, you know, this winter of death. I don't think that's the case at all from what I'm seeing right now and from even my own family in Massachusetts. 8 members of the family got Omicron, and they're all pulling out of it within 4 or 5 days. So it's really good news in that respect, but I think it is important to really understand what's happening and to be careful about it. That's all I have, sir.
Actually, my only comments are I'm really happy with the progress we're making towards the new fire department. Yes, the designs need to be reworked, that they didn't meet what we wanted exactly, but that's the process of designing. You rework it multiple times before you really get what you want. So I'm okay with that. We have little time to work on it. I agree with John that it seems that the new variant, while more contagious, is not as deadly.
Or deadly at all.
Or deadly at all by and large. And actually, I did read that most of the people in the hospitals because of it are people who had not been vaccinated at all.
And had Delta.
Well, that I didn't read, but it's completely possible. Wish everybody a healthy and happy Christmas and New Year.
Ditto, absolutely. Peg?
Thanks, Mayor. Couple of things. League of Cities, as promised last meeting, I have a little more information. 2 cases were determined by the Florida court systems, and in both cases, the municipality prevailed, which is good news for people in municipal government. Key one is Holmes Beach v. Coral Escapes condo, and the condo tried to overturn or challenge the municipalities' short-term rental ordinances. And the municipality of Holmes Beach prevailed. Their rental ordinances were stayed in place. And so that just keeps reiterating that the municipalities wish to maintain their own ordinances. However, going forward, it looks like the legislature will possibly try to tweak that to give the state more power. We'll see what happens. And the other one, private group called Bending challenged Reddington, the municipality of Reddington, over the customary use of dry sand beaches. And once again, the municipality prevailed in their ordinance being upheld. The governor released his budget, and for our concerns and those of environmentalists, it's got quite a lot of funding for environmental concerns, flooding, particularly in coastal communities, and also for safety and security, all of those being very, very important to our town. And we'll see how that works. Let's see. I found it interesting that the manatees, which have been brought up by our Natural Resources Board and a concern over boating several times this past year, that actually a kill off of the seagrass in the beds of the intercoastal and the lagoons is really taking a massive toll. And the Fish and Wildlife is encouraging, if you see manatees, please provide them, if in your backyard on the water, please provide them with lettuce, particularly romaine. Believe it or not, and whatever else you might have, and also fresh water out of your hose, that it will assist them due to chemical runoff and pollutants running into our waterways. It is destroying the seagrass. Another reason we seek proper permitting on docks so that the seagrass inspection is provided by the homeowners looking. If you have seagrass, you have to mitigate that with your plans. Lastly, looks like, again, the state is going to have a challenge from the League of Cities about more places for electronic powered vehicles to recharge. in our budgetary climate in the state, and due to the fact that they have not been really provided with a price tag that's affordable or even usable by certain trades such as landscapers, long-term haulers. The EVs are still a ways off for all of us. I know that some condos might have a recharging station. It will be a great thing, as our fire consultants have stated, once technology is at a better place, but we're not quite there yet. There are many other concerns that we're battling. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks, Big. Natasha?
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question. When does the Financial Advisory Board meet again? Do you know?
January 27th. You're on it. Don't worry.
Okay,
You're on
yeah.
it.
I just wanted to confirm that I will prepare an updated package for them to review. And then I guess I was thinking at the same time, well, I guess to give it to this commission, I'll present it to the Financial Advisory Board, but then our commission would also have an opportunity to review it. And then whatever recommendation they have, I'll have a follow-up presentation to the commission. And yeah, just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And I'll see you next year.
Great. A couple of quick things. One, Glenn, Tom, thank you for joining us today. Very informative. You guys took a little too long, but is what it is. Oh, one of you took too long. Do we have any idea? I know things are a little slow in finance right now, but so do we know when we can get an update on the water and sewer actual versus plan update? Actual revenue versus
Right after the
planned
veterans
revenue?
website. No. So no, everything's concurrent. We should be able to get you something, I hope, in a week or two. Our consultants that are doing the rate study update gave us a laundry list of stuff. A lot of what you just talked about will be provided to them, and thus I can
that'd be
provide
great.
back to the commission on year to date, but it's the year to date and you want to compare it against multiple seasons of it. It's kind of a little bit trickier, but we'll provide some of that information.
So even sometime in January? That'd be terrific. Thank you.
Mhm.
The letter that went out to the buildings for recertification.
Yes.
I think the letter itself was difficult for a building manager or a building president to follow. I think it was a little too technical.
We
There was-
softened it, so there's a new version. I'll send it to you.
Would you please? Thank you.
And to all of the commission.
No, I'm just going to randomly select. No. Yes.
I didn't hear that, John.
No, I would like to see it for the rest of the commission as well. Each get a copy because I agree with you that we already had some questions come up like, well, what does this mean? And I don't see, there's a blank in here for a date. I mean, I don't know what.
Well, we
I
give you a
should do.
template letter, so everybody gets the same letter, but Jeff went ahead and added some softer language to the intro to kind of explain why or how we got here, but it's
Yeah,
still,
there were references to things that, we might know, but then the reader's not going to know.
it's going to be somewhat technical still, just because it's based or premised on law, and so it's going to have some reference to it to be safe, but I'll send it along the updated.
That'd be terrific. Thank you. This morning, I made a presentation to the Beach Condo Association. Every December, they ask both Highland Beach's mayor and the mayor of Boca to give kind of like an update on what we have done this past year. So the fact that we haven't run until 5:30 or 6 o'clock, I thought I'd run through it with everybody just so they kind of know what I told them. So you don't get if you get a question, be no surprises. And I won't go through every detail of it, but it was kind of interesting after I put it together, and thank you, Teresa, who helped a great deal on pulling this together. We've done a lot this year. Okay, we should be proud of everything we've done. So come on, work. Why aren't you working? Well, if there's anybody back there, would you advance the slide? Okay. I won't use this. You could just advance it for me then. Oh, first slide is us.
There's the
Wave, everybody-
progress.
Everybody wave. Yes, ma'am. Hey. Okay, so obviously, it's the old story, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them. So the summary was, we're going to go through the update of the new town logo, town safety initiatives, the automated permit process, which people said, wow, you can do that. New water and sewer rates, implementation of new financial software, charter updates, we've got a lot of questions, and then some fun facts. When we went through the logo, well, that's not working. When we got to the last one, which was the final, obviously I said, well, try to get 2 men and 3 women to decide on something that's hard. It got a little bit of laughter, but we did it and we got through it. And everybody said, wow, what a nice difference from where you started to where you are now. The town safety initiatives was very interesting. I followed Mayor Singer. He had a slide called Town Safety Initiatives. Okay. And he talked about the safety things they did. And one of the key things that he spent a great deal of time on was they are going to be doing enhancement of their crosswalks, where we talked about the crosswalks we have done. And he was focused on A1A. And they were putting 9 of them in. We put 8 of them in. So obviously, he's going to have his people talk to Marshall about what we did and how we did it. So we also talked a lot about our fire rescue and, what our problems were, what we found when we did the study, why we made the decision we made, et cetera, and the wonderful 89% positive vote we got on the 10 million. Then we talked about what we did to educate our people and what went into it. And I just talked about it was a multimedia campaign. I didn't go into the details of the campaign, but the key was to make sure that our people had the education, had the knowledge so they could make informed decisions. We talked a little bit about the police marine unit and how remarkably we made a decision in November, and in March, Chief is going to be already out there with the vessel and be patrolling. People couldn't believe that we could move that quickly. Then we talked about recertification, spent a good deal of time on this. It appeared as though from what, and of course, they spoke about it also in Boca, and it appeared as though we are the only 2 communities that have this in effect right now throughout the entire state, from what he said. And that's because we spoke about it at it was called a coffee with the mayors Zoom that we had, and there were about 55, 58 mayors that were on it. This was about 2-3 weeks ago, and none of the other communities had it. A couple of them had started working on it. Most of them hadn't even begun it. But that's because most of them are not on the coast. And if you're not on the coast, it's not quite as critical. So yeah, our 2 communities are the only 2 that have it out at this point. So obviously we went through all the specifics on what ours is. Then we showed our crosswalks. And this obviously shows what we're most proud of is that this photo was taken to show how the new lights work, not the blinking yellow lights. And it's like daytime with those lights. They're fabulous. We talked about the automated building permit process. A couple of people couldn't believe that we're averaging 11 days. Got to remember the people that were there were from here and from Boca. In Boca, apparently it takes forever. The water rates, I spent a little bit of time on this. Nobody seemed to really care. We care. We worked really hard. Okay. I mean, Natasha's spent a lot of time on it, but I mean, the commission spent a ton of time on this. It's a hell of an accomplishment. And nobody in the audience, I thought somebody would ask some questions. But got to remember, this is the condo association and condo owners don't even know what they're paying for it. They could care less about how it was calculated. So I misread my audience on that one. Okay. The new financial system, we talked about that. Scott Singer was shaking his head saying, you mean commissioners are still paying, still signing checks? That's so antiquated that, yeah, we are. We were. We still are. Then I spent some time on this because, the other condos are kind of looking at what are they doing in their town. And the people from Boca are like shaking their heads saying, are you kidding me? And when I spoke about a spending limit, they thought like I was from Mars. You have a spending limit? Like I never heard of that before. So anyways, that was it. And then the fun facts, that was pretty cool. Obviously, I was very proud to tell them we accomplished all this and still lowered our mill rate a tiny little bit. Population increase, people kind of got a chuckle with our 4,300 population here. But the $30 million sale, that's big. Boca can't, they don't have a $30 million house sale. Okay. And that's the end of it. Okay, so that was that.
Nice job.
Thank you. Only thing else is I wish everybody a happy and a healthy holiday and a great New Year's. Oh, you got something?
Yes, I would like to congratulate Jeff Remus on
Oh,
a
yes.
very lovely award that he justly deserves.
Yeah, so Jeff, for those that are watching, Jeff Remus is the Building Official of the Year for the Palm Beach County Building Officials Association. So very proud of his accomplishment and all the work he's done this year to earn that.
Super. Yeah, I mean, between that, getting the recertification up and running, and obviously the automating the whole process of permitting, Jeff's been busy. Yeah, we're pleased to have him. I
Mayor?
think that is it. Oh, got something else?
Yes, I'd like to see if we can take your presentation and have it processed by the town manager in one of the minutes or in an email to residents. I think it's a nice summary of what they've paid us to do up here.
Great idea. No problem.
Thank you.
T has it. You got the whole copy of it, right? Yep. Okay, that's it. Good to go. Thank you all. Great. Whoops, wait a minute. What are you saying? Oh, we've got anything from council? No? Marshall, you have nothing, right?
I have nothing because you guys are so good and comprehensive in yours. And I work for you all, so well said.
Chief, anything? Nothing. Okay, thank you all.
Merry
Thank
Christmas.
you. Merry Christmas.
The meeting's adjourned at 3:51 PM. I got it.
Thank you. We are adjourned.